I see a friend of mine might have joined on the screen here. Hitomi, how are you doing up there in British Columbia right now?
Actually, it's a nice day today, and there's snow caps on the mountain. And this morning, coming back from Vancouver, I saw a whole pod of whales. It was a great day, and it made me think of Hawaii.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
So Hitomi, we're gonna, there's a HFNA created documentary that we have about the orchids in Hawaii. It's still in a little bit of the rough cut form, but we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna roll this one because it's absolutely beautiful, and it's about our whole community, our orchid growing community here in Hawaii. Why don't we go ahead and enjoy this beautiful Orchid in Hawaii documentary that was created for HFNA.
Orchids grown in Hawaii. The quality of orchids cultivated throughout the islands is known around the world. With the spirit of aloha, farmers and breeders have shared their plant successes, creating a robust commerce for the state. The University of Hawaii's breeding program has developed orchid varieties and growing techniques. Hawaii's orchid farms and nurseries offer a diverse source of perfect cut stems and exotic potted orchids.
So about 30 years ago, my dad, James, had a little backyard nursery in Hilo, hence the name Hilo Orchid Farm. And shortly after, they moved up to Mountain View and started building greenhouses every couple of years.
2008 was the last greenhouse built.
Yeah. So we have 7 now.
Yeah, we were on Oahu, and we were, just working and doing our stuff doing our things up there. And then we had a family, and we thought it was important to, come back and raise a family together with, too close to both of our families here. We're both from Hilo originally, so that was really important to us, and just the kind of lifestyle change that we needed. The timing was right.
And I grew up here. I really enjoyed growing up on a farm, and it's something really special that not a lot of people get to do anymore, so wanted our family to be able to have that. My dad hybridizes a lot of orchids. I think it's probably his favorite part about growing orchids is just learning the lineage of the plants and what does well. He's really a scientist at heart, so we've got a lot of hybrids that we're known for. We've got patents on a few of them. The one right behind Aubrey here, the Lensidim Sweet Sugar Lemon Drop, is one of our patented orchids.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to hear him talk about what his goals are for certain kind of hybridizing. It might be to bring out certain characteristics of a flower or to remove certain characteristics of a flower, but also on making it stronger or even the length of the stem. Making it shorter or bigger, is really, the possibilities are endless.
So we started growing Phalaenopsis mainly and some paths, and now we grow a wide variety of things, but we've always been wholesale, both locally in Hawaii and shipping to the US mainland. Hawaii is a good place to grow orchids because of the climate. We're at an advantage to a lot of the mainland growers because we don't have to heat our greenhouses, which is a huge cost savings. We have a lot of rainwater up here in Mountain View. We use catchment tanks, and we water our plants, 3 to 4 times a week, and that's hundreds of gallons of water each time. And we have solar panels that power a lot of the activities going on in our greenhouses, and that's really helpful too.
So right now we have 36 acres at the farm with about 5 acres of environmentally controlled greenhouses.
There are probably 4 main groups here. The first one is growing, and so we have people potting, weeding, feeding, watering, harvesting. And then there's sales, so talking to customers, taking orders, fulfilling them, processing them, shipping them out. We have grounds crew and maintenance. It's a big property to maintain, and we're constantly doing maintenance on upkeep on our equipment and machinery and greenhouses, doing preventative maintenance. And then office management work, so we're doing accounting, financing, HR, all of that we do in-house.
I think a degree in horticulture or agriculture would definitely go a long way. It would definitely teach you some of the basics and prevent you from making a lot of mistakes that you'd otherwise might learn on your own. You know, UH, they have a great extension program. They're always helpful, kind of just learning on the job and actually working in the industry.
While you're young, you could get a part-time job, move around, and just kind of learn from everyone. We've got a lot of great growers on the island and a lot of experience in different areas, and I think all of that's very helpful. We really want to look for people who are responsible and have great attention to detail. We're dealing with a lot of live inventory, so mistakes that you make could determine whether huge crops of plants live or die or whether they ever flower, and we might not catch these mistakes till weeks, months, or even years down the line, and it's very costly. So if you're able to just be responsible for your tasks and just keep an eye out for all kinds of things like early on, whether it's pests or disease or just anything out of the ordinary, we really appreciate that about our employees. We had a big flood back in 2000. It was really devastating.
Yeah, FEMA actually declared it as a natural disaster, and it wiped out a lot of nurseries, not just ours.
Yeah, like we had just stood up our fourth greenhouse, filled it with plants, and then the water levels rose above the benches and we lost everything.
Because it was declared as a natural disaster, FEMA was able to provide some resources to help clear out some of the debris. Insurance helped cover some of the plants. We worked with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Services and to help develop a flood mitigation plan to help with any future floodings. It's kind of interesting the effects that COVID has had for our business. At one point, the demand and interest of orchids have skyrocketed over the last year or two. On the other hand, we're also experiencing a lot of supply chain issues that a lot of other industries are experiencing as well. So anything from shipping in moss to other materials from other countries, because a lot of stuff that we get, we do have to import it from other countries, moss, trays, pots, things like that. So
decisions that we make today don't impact how we're able to deliver tomorrow. They impact things 3 to 5 years from now. So no one saw this coming 3 to 5 years ago. There was no way we could have stocked up on our supplies or increased our inventory. And if we do that today, it's for 5 years from now, and who knows what the market will be like then. HFNA has been great advocates for this industry.
It's a good agency. Really, it gives our nurseries stronger negotiating power, especially when dealing with vendors or even the government and government agencies. They're a great communication tool. They put out great newsletters to keep us all updated on what's going on within the industry and with each other.
I think there is a certain challenge about orchids that makes them so special and unique. It's a challenge to grow them and flower them, to find certain species of them. It's been a challenge for us to learn how to cultivate and sell them. And I think that's what's really drawing people in. And no matter how much you know, there's always more to know, there's always more to see, and it's just such a unique group of plants. I grew up here, so I think as hard as I tried to fight it and go off and experience other things in different career paths, it's brought me back and it's brought my family back, and now it's definitely something that I enjoy. We're learning new things every day, and I still get to apply the problem-solving part of the jobs I used to do, which is something that I really enjoy. So orchids have kind of integrated themselves into my life.
Especially for me, this is, I'm new to all this, and it's my first year still, so every week I'm seeing new things coming ready, starting to bloom. So yeah, it's really exciting just to, walk through the greenhouses and see something I've never seen before.
I have a kind of a different kind of business. I have an office business all my life in Korea. I was in New York. I had a small store, and everyday life is it's unhappy. I happen to be working some other nurseries. That's the job, and Starting from there, I never been in the flower business my life, and I that's about 30 something years, because 82 I think I started first time, and I learned from there, and all the experience from the job.
Before, we used to grow everything in shade houses. We didn't have greenhouses, but as Pahoa became more successful, then we put up greenhouses. My dad purchased a piece of property in Onamea, and then we didn't start right away, but then when we had enough money, then he put up greenhouses in Onamea. So we grow mostly the white orchids because it's the most in demand, because it's more versatile, and I think a lot of our flowers are used for weddings, so white is the one that they like. The white cut flower orchids that we grow, they last really long, so once we cut them, they can live up to 2 weeks, and if you really take good care of it, it can even last longer than that. Well, I think why my dad is so successful is because he was able to weather all of these lava, hurricane. We had landslides. I mean, during COVID, our sales went down from, like, we were doing like less than 50%, and there's always something. You always have to be prepared. So being resilient and hanging in there, and I think that my dad's been probably growing dendrobium cut flowers the longest out of anybody in Hawaii. Like every farm, we have to do a lot of planting. Once we get the flask from Thailand, we deflask it, we plant them out, and then we have to keep transplanting, weeding, fertilizing, fixing greenhouses, changing plastic. On the business side, managing the employees, paying all the bills, being making sure that we have all of our inventory to operate our chemicals, our packing supplies.
We have to, every 6 years, we have to replant new plants. So we have to like recycling.
So basically, like the plants behind us, they will probably be dumped in 2 years. I never wanted to come back to Hawaii after I finished high school. I went to college and I wanted to work in corporate America, wear a suit every day. And then I came back home not planning on staying, but just on vacation. And then my dad needed some help, and I came down here. And then he was down a worker, so I started working in the farm. And I was like, actually, I really like this. And then eventually, my dad didn't want me to stay, but then he was like, "Oh, I guess she's a good worker." And then, kind of, that's how it started. He's like, "Do you want to take over the business?" And then he didn't want me to leave. And so I thought that, I could make this business a lot better. We could expand, diversify our customers. So that's kind of what I offer to my dad. And then I like working together. I mean, sometimes we don't get along, but most of the time we do. So I like the lifestyle now.
Yeah, orchids makes me happy.
My family has always lived in Hawaii, and my mother had her own nursery, and she would travel from time to time. And on one of these trips, she brought me home Leliocattleya, mini purple. It's my first orchid, still have it, and that's what kicked this whole thing off. I became quickly very enraptured and started studying and trying to learn as much as I could, and I've been hooked ever since. So I started the Orchid Fix in 2019, mainly as a means of gainful employment. Obviously, before I started my own nursery, I was working for other local nurseries. One night over dinner, my mom pointed out that if I worked half as hard as I did for all the other people I'd worked for, she thought I'd be pretty successful doing it myself, which was probably the first kick in the butt to try and make something happen. I'd known even since a young kid that I'd wanted to have my own farm, but it is difficult in Hawaii. The high cost of living, the cost of land, startup costs, right? All these different factors which contribute. So unless you happen to be blessed to be independently wealthy, it does take a bit of careful planning to get started, but you can do it. and I'm so happy I did. It's the best thing I've ever done. I think that orchids, like people, are an incredibly diverse family, and so, you know, with a myriad of shapes, colors, and sizes, there's something for everyone to love. Currently, the Orchid Fix grows over 400 different genera and about 10,000 different species. Some of these I hybridize to create new varieties. Some of them I cultivate to preserve, as some of these plants are going extinct in the wild, or in certain cases are already extinct in the wild. And so cultivation is the only way to keep the species going. What I'm in the business of doing is transferring pollen from one orchid to another. I create a seed pod. These seed pods are sent out to laboratories across the country and internationally. Their seeds are then germinated on a sterile medium, and they come back to us, containers very much like this one. We take the plants out of those containers, and they go into a community pot or a liner tray, something like this. And then, you know, eventually the plants mature. Hopefully they flower. And over the course of 4 to 10 years, this is how a new orchid variety is developed. You know, as a hybridizer, someone who is in the business of creating new varieties of orchids, we are always, you know, trying to keep on the pulse with what it is that people are after. And of course, things like bright colors, long shelf life, ease of growing are all really important factors we take into consideration when developing new varieties. The really special thing that I think most people have already caught on to about Hawaii is that there's really no other place on planet Earth like Hawaii. And one of the reasons why orchids grow so well here is the same conditions that you would find in these plants' native habitats are reproduced with an incredible level of similarity here in Hawaii. And so they're growing so well simply because it's just like in their native habitat. So one of the really lovely things about being a farmer here in Hawaii is not only do we get to call this lovely place home, but it usually affords you a really rich diversity. You can have your farm animals, you can have your beautiful plants, you usually have a little area to spread out on, and it's just generally a really wonderful lifestyle. The thing that has kept me going this whole time and continues to fascinate me is the infinite form and endless diversity of these plants. And it's become apparent that no one person will ever know everything there is to know about orchids. And so that kind of endless wonder, endless fascination, if you will, is what keeps me hooked. So another piece of advice I have for young people interested in getting into the industry, be it orchids or just farming in general, is don't be shy. Get out there, you know, see if you can visit farms, talk to people, talk to farmers, and if you can, you know, get a part-time job or try it out, or, you know, somehow get involved. It could be that you find you like, you know, some aspects of it more than others, or maybe, you know, you thought you wanted to be an orchid grower. Turns out, actually, you like being, you know, food farmer. That's okay. We need farmers. And the only way to really figure out what you like, what you're good at, what you want to do, is get out there and start doing it. At its heart, you know, I feel very fortunate. There's a huge community of very kind, talented people in this industry. And the people you work with, you know, both domestically and internationally. So you work with these really wonderful people growing these really beautiful exotic flowers, and I can't think of a more rewarding way to earn a living. OGO, the Orchid Growers of Hawaii, is the professional organization for orchid growers in the state of Hawaii, and that's a good resource and has been helpful. HFNA, of course, Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association, has done work on behalf of farmers throughout the state to lobby politicians and, you know, address items and issues of import to the industry. And of course, the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Agriculture, UHCTAR, continues to do work in plant pathology and plant breeding, and generally supports the industry from an academic standpoint.
There are different accounts as to how orchids came to Hawaii. Some of the accounts dating back to 1868 in the Hillebrand Estate, which is now where Foster Garden is located. So Hillebrand worked for, I believe, the Kingdom of Hawaii and stayed here until he returned to Germany. The other notable people who have brought in orchids to Hawaii prior to the war include Dr. Harold Lyon, for whom the Lyon Arboretum is named after. Post-war, the members of the 100th Infantry Battalion had an orchid club called Club 100. They not only exchanged pollen, but they also exchanged plant material, and this contributed greatly to the number of hybrids that have originated from Hawaii. It's worth noting also that this exchange of plant materials was not limited to Oahu. There were also plant exchanges between growers on Hawaii Island, Maui, and Kauai. One of the important developments in the Hawaii orchid industry was the innovation started by Reverend Masao Yamada. What did Reverend Yamada do? He showed that it was easy to germinate orchid seeds in flasks using simple things such as orchid fertilizer, organic additives such as tomatoes or bananas, and using agar sticks to solidify the tissue culture medium. By germinating seeds in an artificial medium, you get more seeds surviving rather than just letting the orchid seeds grow naturally in nature, where they have to form a symbiotic relationship with a fungi. This is because orchid seeds don't really have a reserve source of food. So giving an artificial medium that's easy to prepare made it possible for orchid growers in Hawaii to grow many different kinds of new hybrids. I was mentored by Dr. Haruyuki Kamemoro. Dr. Kamemoro was born and raised in Manoa. He belonged to a large family of flower growers. His older brother was an orchid breeder and was also a source for many of our germplasm. The orchid breeding project started in 1950 upon Dr. Kamemoro's return from graduate school. Initially, the studies were focused on taxonomy and characterization of the plants by their chromosome numbers. So the research focused on counting chromosomes of orchids of interest in Hawaii. This included the genera of Vandas, Cattleyas, Phalaenopsis, and Dendrobium. In fact, there were graduate students and visiting colleagues who devoted quite a bit of time to count chromosomes of different orchids in Hawaii. Fast forward to the 1970s or even late 1960s, when there were research projects that dealt with breeding of orchids as well as tissue culture propagation of orchids. So when we look back, many of the research projects dealing with tissue culture of orchids was conducted by Dr. Yoneo Sagawa. Dr. Sagawa devoted a number of years researching on tissue culture of orchids. Dr. Kamemoro, on the other hand, focused on the breeding of Dendrobium orchids, focusing on polyploidy, or what we call multiple chromosome sets. Because of his studies on polyploidy, he was able to develop a special polyploid. Essentially, a breeding behavior is like a species, and this is called an amphidiploid. The amphidiploids come from diploid process between different sections. With the development of amphidiploid parents, we are able to produce many seeds simply by crossing two parents and making a fruit. A fruit will conservatively have between 5,000 to 8,000 seeds. So with the seed-propagated varieties, a single pollination can yield up to 8,000 or even more seedlings. Because they are uniform, this allows our growers to have a large number of plant materials to work with. And this is the reason why Hawaii has been able to develop seed-propagated dendrobium cultivars. This led to the development of the Uni-Y varieties. Uni-Y stands for University of Hawaii. So contracting it, we have the word Uni-Y. Dr. Kamemoto is responsible for all of the Uni-Y series. This includes the most widely grown two-tone dendrobium Uni-Y Supreme, UH232, the most widely grown white variety Uni-Y Mist, and the most widely grown purple variety Wally Murazani UH1427. The impact of this technology has allowed the rapid increase of plant materials for our growers to use and grow. The orchid industry in Hawaii is successful due to a number of factors. I think we have ideal climate. It's not too hot, neither is it too cold. The understanding of plant diseases, the understanding of mineral nutrition. I would also say that the information exchange facilitated by our extension agents, growers groups, industry groups, the spirit of aloha, the spirit of sharing expertise, sharing plant materials. These different types of orchids in general help the industry move forward and become a leader worldwide.
My parents started the business when I was in middle school sometime. My dad actually retired at an early age from working at Pearl Harbor as a civilian. Around that time, the University of Hawaii was releasing the cut flower variety of orchids that they have developed. He started growing baby plants of the cut flower dendrobiums orchids that were developed by University of Hawaii. I helped him along the way, a little bit. My brother joined full-time after he graduated college. He graduated with a horticulture degree. I joined the company full-time in 1992 when we acquired some property on the Big Island in Kapoho, and I moved from Oahu to the Big Island at that time. And we slowly grew the company to one of the larger cut flower nurseries in the state. But my product, because of our volume, we sold mainly to other floral wholesalers on the island and on the continental US. Unfortunately, in 2018, the killer whale eruption covered practically all of Kapoho, and all the orchid nurseries who were my neighbors and everybody's houses got covered with about 60 to 80 feet of lava. That kind of put a big dent into the orchid industry. When the flow started to come towards our direction, it came down fast, skinny. We had about 2 days of moving time, and everybody in Kapoho had to move through Beach Road, and they had daily flyovers over the area. It was coming down, and originally, the year 1960, there was a flow in that area that went straight to the ocean, straight to the lighthouse area. So I assumed that it would do the same thing, go straight to the ocean. But unfortunately, it took a right turn right to our nurseries, which my nursery was at the base of, on the Makai side of Green Lake Mountain. So it came straight down and came towards my nursery, but didn't cover my nursery, maybe about a fourth. And then it turned and went to the ocean. So I was thinking, oh, maybe I have a chance. I still have most of my nursery, but 2 days later, the flow changed and it came across the other side of Green Lake Mountain. So it surrounded Green Lake Mountain and then took out the other side, the remaining part of my nursery. So it was rough. I mean, I have some greenhouses in the back of my house, but not nearly enough to survive on. There was a bunch of nurseries, I think it's about 10 or something, orchid nurseries that was totally covered in a couple of things. So an idea is tossed around, why don't we, is there a possibility of creating an agriculture park or an orchid park on possibly maybe state land, government land? Gordon Inouye, who is a board member of HFNA, had discussed with a large landowner, WH Shipping, if he had land available to lease. And for orchids, you don't need good soil. In fact, we don't need any soil. And if you don't know the KL area, there's a lot of rocks. So we don't mind building on rocks. We made an agreement to lease part of the quarry. In the meantime, we formed a cooperative. We talked to all the affected orchid growers in Kapoho. We were able to get some grants through HFNA and through SHAC. SHAC is kind of like an umbrella organization. The SHAC members are HFNA, the papaya industry, and coffee. It's kind of a dual purpose. One is to help relocate the affected orchid nurseries. Another grant we got is to train people, familiarize people so that they can start their own orchid business also. And then that, in turn, when they have product available, they can also feed it back to the co-op and market it through the co-op instead of having to do everything, all the marketing yourself. So we were able to get some grants to help us build infrastructure. We were focusing on potted plants. So everything has to be built on benches, minimum 18 inches off the ground as required by the Department of Agriculture.
With the passion and perseverance of island growers, Hawaii has become a valuable source of diverse, high-quality orchids. The Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association, the University of Hawaii, and other organizations continue to support the improvement of techniques and development of new cultivars. People will always be attracted to intriguing orchid plants. The future is bright for orchid growers in Hawaii.
I think we deserve give a round of applause for that amazing documentary there. Hitomi, did you see that?
Oh, what a wonderful story of resilience. I mean, it's a wonderful story about the orchid culture, but the resilience since the lava. And then to work together, to come back as a co-op, stronger than ever. That's fantastic.
It really, I think, solidifies our message that we're trying to get across here through this whole event, which is, you know, we're one big community, from the designer to the grower to the shipper to everybody. We're all here to help each other in one common cause and goal. So we're really excited to have you to tell us.
Yeah, well, and it's really exciting that we're the end user of all these wonderful products. And, you know, I'm just biting at the bits, thinking of all these orchids that's going to be available down the pipe. It's going to be just fantastic.